6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are still not live, but maybe we are live. And I've just not picked up on it yet. Is the sound working? Everything seems to be working just fine. Great. We need to change the desserts we're eating. Okay, that's today's hook. Thanks for dropping by, friends. My name is Toby. I'm 41 years old and I train to live an active, self-sufficient and adventurous life. I do so by minding my sleep. I try to get between 7 and 9 hours in a night. I do so by minding what I eat. I try to eat within my energy balance, which is around 2200 calories. And I try to eat a lot of greens and vegetables to make sure that I load up on all those good micro and macronutrients together. And I try to eat sufficient protein to help me hit my strength and muscle building goals. I also show up for training and exercise. Do strength training, strength conditioning training. Sorry, I just need to rinse something. Looks like the dishwasher didn't run last night. Strength and conditioning training in order to stay fit and healthy for living and for life. I try to spend time with people I love and care about, do things that I enjoy, and generally try to live a stress-free life. That's stuff you're interested in. You can go ahead, check out my channel, subscribe, hit like on the stream, and we can continue the conversation today and at other times about what it's actually going to take to stay fit and healthy for longevity. All right. In this podcast, I talk about different topics every day, very shortly, very briefly, so you can just listen to it at the start of your day. On Monday, I talk about sleep. On Tuesday, we talk about food, which we're going to talk about today. Wednesday, we talk about movement. Thursday, we talk about connection. Friday, we talk about mastery. Saturday, we talk about motivation. And Sunday, we reflect on the week and on everything that's been going on and that has happened in the last week in terms of our own health and fitness. And that taken together makes a nice weekly cycle of small changes that we can make every day in our life to actually help us start to be fitter, healthier, and live longer, more active, self-sufficient, and adventurous lives. In today's podcast, we're going to talk about today's training because I'm just done training. Then we're going to talk about food, and then we're going to talk about one small change that we can make about food in what we eat that might help us by becoming a steady, healthy habit in our lives. And we're going to do that while I brew some coffee this morning. And again, I apologize for some of the noise on the background, but I hope that it will be worth it as we continue to listen. And if you're here, just say hi in chat, hit like on the stream. It really helps. And let me know, if you have any questions about today's topics or about any of the other topics we might cover on the podcast. So today's training. Today I did mobility work, and I did some mobility work that is light, easy. I have a set routine. It takes me about 30 minutes to go through it, and I go through it 3 times a week, and it's full body. So from my feet and ankles, I actually need to start reintroducing toe yoga, I think, to the mix all the way up to my wrists and neck, and where it pivots and swivels. And I just very easily, very slowly go through, some movements. I'm not in a rush when I do this. It is a moment to breathe, relax, and connect with my body, and really understand how my body is moving, where there might be some areas that require a little bit of attention, where there are things that I need to be mindful of as I move and train throughout the day. I think it's just a good way to start the day, and it's made me more flexible, more mobile, improved my range of motion, laid bare where there are challenges with my range of motion, which I haven't been able to fix or am in the process of fixing. And overall, I think it's helped me both in my training, but also in how I can play with my kids, for example, low by the floor, by being able to do an Asian squat all the way down and sitting with them, talking with them, those kinds of things. So a lot of benefits there. I usually do kettlebell on Monday, mobility on Tuesday, kettlebell on Wednesday, mobility on Thursday, kettlebell on Friday, mobility on Saturday, and a run on Sunday. So I have a nice mix of training modalities throughout the week. If that's something that you're interested in, how I schedule that. I see the mobility days as recovery days, so it is movement, and it is a form of training, but it is very light and non-intensive compared to the kettlebells or the runs. So I also see it as a part of my recovery, if that makes sense. There, the coffee is done. So hey, let's talk about food for a little bit. And I actually have two books that I am reading here. When it comes to plant-based eating, I think Dr. Michael Greger is an authority online, has some interesting things to say. I am not vegan. I eat fish and meat, but given what I've learned about plant-based diets and the impact on long-term health, I am trying to add more plants and different varieties of foods to my diets, and I found this book to be quite helpful. And of course, Tim Spector, together with Ultra Processed People, Chris von Tulleken, is how I came across him, and the project at Zoe, the research that they're doing. Interesting just to read and to understand what they say about food, what they say about the latest research, and what that might mean for the way I eat and drink throughout the day at the time. And opinions differ. I think there are as many opinions about food as there are people in the world, even though we can cluster them. It is very personal. It is, and I think the debate has been going on for a long time. I remember when I was young, I'm 41, right? When I was probably 8 or 9, there were diet books that my parents would bring home. There was the book about the blue zones. I think at the time it was a big hit. There was Atkins, there was Montagnac, there was on Oprah, there was, I remember the ongoing story about her struggle with weight and health and fitness, and how that affected, the way we thought and talked and ate and drank. At the time, there was Weight Watchers. I think one of the things that shocked me the most, I'll give you a little story, is I think when I was 11 or 12, we visited the United States. This was a big trip, and we visited, and for me, growing up in Holland, there was a McDonald's, but it was like 20 kilometers away. So you have to get in the car and you drive there, and the only time we'd actually really go there is if we would go to the movies in the, big city, which wasn't a very big city, but big city. that lay beyond where they had built the McDonald's. So that was a part of that ritual. Hay fever. Hay fever, people. What can I say? I think the camera caught that. I will have to snip that out later. So, back to story time. So we got to America, and at one point, I think after having been there for 2 or 3 weeks, we went to a fast food place again, and there were a lot of fast food places that we didn't even have in the Netherlands, like, Taco Bell and KFC was a rarity. I think there were 1 or 2 in the big city at the time. Well, like they are a bit more accessible now. Dankeschön. Thank you. I'm a dog too. I appreciate the well wishes, and I'll try not to sneeze on the live stream again. But I guess sometimes that happens. It's live. Anything can happen. But I appreciate that, and I hope that you're well where you're at in the world. So I got really upset. I said, that's not food. Why are you eating it so often? Because we were with my, I think friends of the family or my aunt and nephew. I'm not sure which ones it were, but I really got mad about the fact that there was so much junk food being eaten, and I thought it was unhealthy, and I was very principled about it. And I think now we look back on that, everyone can have a good laugh about it. But also looking at the trajectory of the health lines in terms of the population and society, I don't think I was completely wrong to be so frustrated about the type of food that I was given. I don't think it had anything to do with my understanding of what healthy and good food was in terms of my long-term health and fitness. It was just very different from what I was used to eating back home, because my mom did a lot of cooking. My dad worked, my mom was always home. So there was always fresh food on the table every day for lunch, dinner, breakfast, right? And I think the answer I got back then is, well, but it's just food. It's bread, it's meat, vegetables, everything's there. And I think there was already a debate and conversation going on about what food is and what food isn't at the time. And that conversation is still going on 30 years later. Okay, so food is an incredibly personal thing. It's an incredibly important thing because it's the one thing that we all have to do. We have to breathe, we have to drink, we have to eat to sustain ourselves and to stay alive. And then with food there comes the experience of flavors, tastes, satiation, pleasure, right? So it's very hard to disassociate that from the function of food and say, well, why am I actually eating? And what kind of food is good for me, and good for me in what way? Because when we talk about, for example, soul foods, right? Foods that are on a cold day, a good stew, right? That's steaming and hot, and your bones are cold because you've been outside in the cold. Then one word is ingredients. Yes, I agree. I think that helps us define what food definitely is or isn't. Wheat, barley, oats, rice. I think that there's some wisdom in that for sure. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that. Right. So we need to take what we know about food, and when we look at things like soul food, like that stew on a hot day when our bones are cold from having been outside in the cold the whole day, that's good food. That could be high in fatty. There could be a lot of carbs mixed into that. There might be a lot of flavors and juices and sauces. There might be a lot of meat in that, which is something that I try to eat little but sufficient of, right? But that's hearty food, it makes you feel better on the day. And then because it makes you feel better, it's good food, right? But is it the healthiest option you have available? Maybe, maybe not, right? But there's this balance that we're trying to strike always between the foods that we eat and the function that they take in. Is it purely functional? Am I eating the foods to stay lean, to lose weight, to build muscle? Or am I eating the foods to socialize and to enjoy because someone has cooked a meal for me, which is a thing, right? Someone has invested time, effort, and energy in preparing something for my nourishment and enjoyment, and for the socialization around the table that we can have. So there's all of those factors that make food slightly complicated, okay? But that doesn't change the fact that there are things we know about foods and about what impact foods have on our short and long-term health. And that there are things that we can do today that are going to help us, live an active, adventurous, unencumbered life, because we've been eating the foods that are going to keep us fit, healthy, and active throughout our life, that are going to help us maintain heart health and cardiovascular health and mind health, that are going to help us build muscle, right? That are going to keep us strong and fit and able. But in that mix, because there's a huge variety, and I think one of the interesting things, right, about the blue zones, even though there are a lot of things we can say about the research they did there, is that those places where there were a disproportionate amount of centenarians, people who lived to be 100 healthily, the diets varied widely, which means that there are a lot of different food types that we can consume that might have similar effects on our short and long-term health and longevity, okay? So when we start to get pigeonholed and this is the best diet, or this is the best diet, this is the best way to eat, we need to take a step back and remember that there are two things that can be true at the same time. That on average, certain advice can be very useful for us to inform our food choices, and that anecdotes of things that people have done can be very true and useful advice for us to inform our food choices, but that the anecdote and the average don't need to necessarily point in the same direction, okay? And I think for us it's important to figure out what works for us based on science and understanding, and that might also help explain why certain anecdotes exist of why certain things do or do not work for the individuals. And I think these are more popular science books, right? They've been written for a popular, wide audience to help inform food choices. And there are a couple of more, like I have Outlive, I have The Longevity Diet by Dr. Walter Longo as well. They are distillations of the science, so this doesn't make me a scientist, this makes me someone who's read a couple of books about food, and that informs my decision. So when we want to have a conversation with people about food, it's always important also to remember, what my level of knowledge is, and what my understanding of food is, and what my experience with food is. In my experience, two things are really important and have been really important for me to get healthy and stay healthy over time. And that is, one, balancing my energy intake. So how much energy am I using versus how much energy am I expending? Because when that goes slightly out of whack, and that's not very hard, because that does happen on occasion, I immediately start to put on weight. It takes me a month to notice it, but it's very clear, and I can go back into my behaviors and see, oh yeah, I can see why that weight has been put on. It's not very hard to do. So managing the energy balance, 1. 2, creating a variety of foods and on the menu, and creating a variety of go-to meals that meet my standard nutritional requirements, but that offer variety in flavor, texture, experience, preparation time, so that every meal is healthy but nutritious, and fits within that first parameter of energy balance. Those are things that have helped me stay fit and healthy over time. Maybe there's an insight in there for you. Abhinava Roy, thanks for dropping by, saying hi. Sometimes people say that it's ASMR. It isn't an ASMR channel, but maybe I should look into that at some point in my life. I appreciate you dropping by, saying hi, and I hope you're doing well where you're at in the world. We're actually at the end of today's podcast, and we're going to leave us with one small change that we can make. And the one small change related to food that I think we can try to make is to start having fruit as dessert. And it's an easy swap to make because you basically need 5 different fruits in the house. And it's a good swap for a variety of reasons, but I'll give you 2. Fruits have fibers in them, right? So they're relatively sizable, chunky, and they have some volume to them, which means they'll fill up our stomachs, but they also have fibers, which we take some time to digest, compared to other desserts that don't have fiber but are very sweet. We'll talk about the sweetness in a second, because that's the second insight. So which don't fill us up as much as fruit, meaning that we might be prone to eating more after. Whereas when we have one of these, well, we're relatively full, and that's what we're going to have had for dessert. The second reason is that this has sugars in it. Those are naturally occurring fruit sugars, and at least where I live, there's no upper limit on the sugars we can consume as long as they're part of the foods that we eat. Where we put the limitation is on the added sugars. So you get something sweet and tasty if you add a fruit to your dessert routine, instead of anything that is packaged and produced, right, or processed. And you have the added benefit of reducing your added sugar intake in one of the meals of the day. So one small change that we can make in terms of food is to add a piece of fruit to our desserts at the end of the day, and see what happens, and try it for 2 weeks and let me know in chat what it was. Friends, that's the end of today's podcast. At 6:15 I have a walk to the forest to make. I appreciate you dropping by, saying hi. Thanks for being here. I'm a dog too, and Abhinava Roy, thanks for being here and saying hello. I hope you're well. Hope you have a good start or end of the day, depending on where you are in the world. Remember, friends, this is about the way I feel, not about the way I look. I would like to feel fit, capable, and competent for whatever life is going to throw at me. We're good just the way we are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. It's the person we are today is going to get us to where we want to be tomorrow. So a bit of kindness is going to go a long way. And the only way to get anything done, friends, is by showing up and doing the work. Hit like, subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow for another video and another stream. And remember, friends, subscribe.